सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. All right. So today's agenda is that we have the first 30 minutes talk by Subbu and Gunz, and Peta is not there, but that's fine. He said he'll join 10 minutes later. You guys can start off. And then we will revise chapter 12, whoever is ready. Then that's the agenda. So over to you, Subbu and Gunz.
Okay. Gunz, you want me to take through the Word document which I had shared? You want me to do that? You're muted. You're muted.
Sorry. Yeah, please go through that, Subbu. And what I thought I will do is I'll compliment you and Srini, talking about my questions on writing, and I have my notes that I sent you all. And we can elaborate more on that aspect.
Okay. Tell me if you're able to see my screen. Huh? You're able to see?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So basically, Hari Om, guys. This was basically the 15th of June, actually, when we actually met with Swami Paramarthananda and Gurupanananda. It was a short trip because Gunz was here in Chennai, and then we sort of made a dash to meet with Swami P and then later Swami G, and then landed up in Tiruvannamalai to be in Ramanashram and Sri Ram Sarath Kumar Ashram. And in the process, we also managed to go to Tapovan. Tapovan is actually about 30 kilometers from Tiruvannamalai, which is there was a Kumbhabhishekam happening there of Jnanananda Swamigal, who is the Guruji of Haridas Maharaj. Okay, so we were there in the morning, and then we did some rounds and temples around that Tiruvannamalai area, and then returned. So this, what I'm going to be talking to you is some notes that we have prepared for the interaction that we had with Swami Paramarthananda. Okay, this is just about, about an hour or so. We got a bit early, so he gave us a full hour. And somewhere we thought, all of us felt that this time when Swami P was talking to us, there was a more connectedness that we felt with him. And the kind of things that he shared with us was quite unique, I should say. Yeah. So some of the questions that we raised with him, okay, is there here in this, short document I have captured as much as I could, right? So the first question is to understand whether dhyana and nididhyasanam are, how different are they, okay? So his answer to that was dhyana is a generic name for both upasana and nididhyasanam combined, okay? So upasana is dhyana, of form and before Vedantic study is undertaken. So when you do the Saguna worship before Vedantic study, it is referred to as upasana. And he concurred that basically Nididhyasanam is the spiritual meditation on Nirguna Brahman. Okay. So it takes the form of, Ishvara meditation, religious meditation, then Vishwarupa, and then culminates in the spiritual meditation, which is Nididhyasanam, right? But he also spoke about some of the benefits that comes across with this. So one is obviously the punya for the sake of spiritual benefit of doing this dhyana. But more importantly, he spoke about what is the kind of benefit it gives to the sadhaka in terms of expansion of mind and ability to sort of accommodate and be accommodating and have this equanimity and not hate anybody. Okay, and to start with, he started with upasana, then said that this would be basically focused on Ishta Devata, and then moving on to Nirguna, which is the Nididhyasanam based meditation, right? He has mentioned that he also had some, talks of this, given in chapter 6 of Bhagavad Gita when he spoke about Dhyana Yoga. So he asked us to sort of go through that and sort of revert, okay, on this. This is the first question number one. So the other question I asked him was, when we say Advaitam, we say there is only one. But then why do we say, we have to move from a triangular format to a binary format? This was my question. So, we normally say, Ishwar, Jagat, and then, uh, Jiva, Jiva, Brahma, and Jagat, right? So we have the triangular format. And after some time, we say that we need to move from the triangular format to the binary format, which is Atma, Anatma. So the question was, if we are saying everything is one, then why do we say binary format, right? So what he referred to was, he said that in Crux, what he mentioned to us was, we consider Atma as the only thing which is real. And there is an Anatma we give, but we do not take it into account because it is unreal. So the reality is only one, is the answer that he gave in some short. Okay. So he started with saying that, Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya and Jivo Brahma Vinaparaha. So I am the self, the world is Maya, etc. Maya is subject to arrival and departure, whereas what is permanent is the Atma. And therefore, he said that, while, we acknowledge that it is two, but we do not take it into account when we count it. Okay, so that way we are saying that it is only one. So a little bit on Nididhyasanam. I think he spoke about, he concurred. See, there was this question in all of us saying that, what is Nididhyasanam? Today we are actually discussing a lot of satsangs. We do a lot of study of scriptures. Is this also Nididhyasanam, right? So his answer to that was, anything that is dwelling on this teaching, is in some way Nididhyasanam. See, you start with Shravanam, you first hear the scriptures. Mananam is about resolving all your, gaps that you have in terms of the understanding that the scriptures are telling and what you are having as an understanding. So once you eliminate the gap, whatever you do, can be considered, so long as it's on the subject of Advaitam and Vedanta, etc., it can be considered as Nididhyasanam. Discussion and deliberation also is Nididhyasanam. Making these kind of presentation is also Nididhyasanam. Making Shravanam, taking notes, a lot of things he spoke about, saying that there are different kinds of Nididhyasanam, Shravana Rupa Nididhyasanam and then Dhyana Rupa Nididhyasanam. He spoke that anything, once the understanding is there, then whatever you do to sort of stay in that understanding is Nididhyasanam. So basically, it means that, whatever we are doing here also, after some amount of understanding, also, tantamounts to saying it is Nididhyasanam. Okay. So the next question was, Advaitam is non-dual, but Prakriti is dual. How do we put Advaitam into practice in daily life? Right. So here, so what he had mentioned is, you need to, when you're operating in the world, he said at the back of it, you should always be aware that, it is a binary format of Atma and Anatma. So whether you're doing a discussion, you're teaching, you're writing, you're, doing some work, etc., this concept should always be at the back of your mind when you operate in the world. But at the same time, you need to be cognizant of the fact that you cannot go and tell, that everything is one, you and I are one, etc., to the world where you're operating in duality, right? But what you need to keep in mind is that at the back of your mind, in the subconscious mind, you need to keep this one teaching of Atma Anatma and the binary format always in place. Okay, and this should dominate at all times, even when I'm alone. Okay, that's what he had mentioned. So he gave an example. So he gave an example saying that, if a child is, having a balloon and it sorts of loses the balloon, right? It starts to cry. Okay. Now, in a situation like this, you cannot go and express to the child that this is all Anatma, you don't have to worry about it, etc. It doesn't make sense to the child because you need to relate to what the child is going through at that point in time. And this, he says, for a person of understanding, comes from a position of daya, compassion. So when you go and say, though you know that, whatever the child has lost is something which is ephemeral and it is not something that it should be worried about, but you still relate and engage with the child in a manner, despite having the understanding that whatever it is going through is something that it will also pass and the child will actually grow out of it. So when you engage in the world, he says, you need to have that compassion despite having the full understanding that it is only Atma and Atma. So that was a take with respect to interactions with the world and Prakriti. Okay. Then this was a question again, I think Srini spoke about this. Do jnanis on realization feel the pain in the body? So he said basically, RC and body are actually cannot be separated. So pain is the same for both the reflected consciousness and the, and the body, right? So he said that Jivan Mukta perceives the pain, but he's not affected or impacted by the pain because, he also has to go through the prarabdha, and he's ever rooted in the Atmic principle. The next question was how to know where I am in the spiritual journey. So here he spoke about two parts. So he said that you can evaluate this at two levels. One is at the emotional level and the other one is the intellectual level. At the emotional level, he said you can use your FIR metric, right, to understand where you are in your progress with respect to emotional maturity, which is basically talking about the Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsarya reduction. So you can use the FIR metric to understand where you are in the progress and keep evaluating this to know whether you have been able to reduce it in terms of both frequency, intensity, and resilience. Okay.
Hey,
But
don't mind. Can you tell what is FIR method, please? I forgot.
Oh, okay.
I think.
No, one is basic. Let's say you're prone to getting anger, right? So you actually want to now reduce anger, and
Frequency,
therefore,
intensity.
frequency, intensity. So first you look at whether, okay, I used to get angry almost 2-3 times a month. Now I'm getting, after reading the scriptures and being engaged in satsang or doing certain activities, the karma, seva, whatever it is, etc. Today, I'm seeing that I don't get, the frequency has reduced from 6 or 7 or some times a month to maybe 2 or 3. Okay. And then maybe it is once or twice a year or 3 times a year or 4 times a year, etc. When you really lost your balance. The intensity also, is something that you can use as a check. Even if I get angry, am I really raising my voice, shouting, throwing a tantrum, making, an impact to the surroundings, or am I able to handle it in a matured way? Okay, that is the intensity. Resilience is how quickly you're able to recover from the anger and come back to normalcy. Yeah. So this is the FIR indicator to metric to understand where you are at the emotional level. As far as the spiritual level, intellectual level is concerned, he said this is something that you need to evaluate yourself. Okay. He didn't have a metric for this. He said intellectual understanding is something that you need to understand basis Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasanam. Right. So you need to go through, the churn in the mind and be very clear in terms of where you are in the journey and whether you have some doubts that needs to be captured. And that has to be resolved. So here clearly the scriptures are the pramanam, that is, they are the authority. The guru is the authority, the scriptures are the authority, and therefore you use that, and you have a certain understanding basis your experience. So you have a certain understanding of what it actually means. If there is a gap, that gap needs to be resolved through mananam. Okay, and then once you have a complete understanding of this, he said that nididhyasanam is something that you need to constantly practice, which is nothing but ensuring that you are going through these at the back of the mind subconsciously all the time, right? Then comes to basically where when we hear from some people they say things contrary, why don't seers respond to that? Okay, so this was, I think Srini asked this question. So he said that sometimes we see a lot of, society related issues, right? Somebody has spoken something about Sanatana Dharma and etc. And it has crossed a lot of issues in many pockets. So his question was, why don't the seers and sages who are, proponents of understanding of this one come and make a statement or, try and involve themselves in these things and clarify to the general public in terms of what needs to be done or give certain clarifications for that. So his response to that was very simple. He said, even a jnani after realization will only operate according to his gunas. Okay. So, for example, a Swami Chinmayananda, after realization, etc., was a very outward person. He wanted to go outside, and his motto was to convert Hindus to Hinduism. Ramana Maharshi was, very much after realization, whatever, he was very much curtailed to himself, right? So every jnani will also operate as per his gunas, is his conclusion. So even if you see the Kanchi Mutt, right, you had this Paramacharya who was very much, rooted in the ashram. And you had a Jayendra Saraswati who was ready to step out and move forward and go to different places and spread the message. So jnanis also, despite having realization, will operate as per their guna. So he did not have to say anything about whether they should participate or not participate. And he said the Vedas and texts also don't say anything for jnanis whether they should come up and participate in these kind of issues at all, right? Then the next question was, should I be reading? One second. Okay. Now the question was, should we read Gita, Gita Bhashyam, all the Upanishads to have a full understanding, right? So we told him that we are currently doing chapter 12 in the Bhagavad Gita, and there are some in Upanishads we have been introduced to. So his thing was the idea is to basically get the knowledge. He said, just if you finish the Gita, it is good, right? He said he made a point saying that Gita Bhashyam may not be really required for everybody, right? He said what is important is that you have a complete understanding of what knowledge has been given, right? Knowledge will not give you any experience; it will only facilitate understanding. Okay, and only a guru can clarify what is right or not. So it is good that you go through this. Do not indulge in self-study. That is something that he said at the early stages of your Vedantic study. So his point was, in the early stages of Vedantic study, it's always good to, stick to a guru and understand from what he's trying to say and get your clarifications done. And do not compare between any Upanishads as to, feel whatever is right for you is right for you, was his point, right? So you're comfortable with the Bhagavad Gita, be happy. You don't need to break your head that you need to do another 10 Upanishads, because the volume of scriptures are enormous. So long as you get the message, you get the understanding, it is good. And you can put that into practice, okay? So we find it, next question was, we find it difficult to practice what is told in the scripture. So this was my question. I had read the Sadhana Panchakam just about 2-3 days before I went and met him. And then when I was reading it, there were almost close to 40 points of what you should do, okay, as an individual when you're, on the spiritual path. And I said, I scored very, very poorly on that. So I was a little, wanting to understand what his point of view on this was. So I asked him, saying that, a lot of times we have missed the bus in many ways. I mean, it's almost, when you talk about trying to do Sandhya Vandanam from, the time you had been initiated, already some 40 years have passed. So in a sense, you already missed the bus in some ways, and whether you should continue, etc., etc. So his point was not to worry about it, okay, which was quite comforting. He said, try and do as much as you can, right? Do not give it up fully. Whatever is possible, you try to, bring it into your daily life, okay? And as far as the other thing that he said is, all this that is being spoken about, right, in terms of doing this ritual or this practice, is to get you to Vedanta. Now that you have come to Vedanta, you don't have to worry about the fact that, whether you have been true to that or not. But make an honest attempt. Do not give it up fully, but try and do as much as you can. And let it not be a bother and a hindrance to you in your journey towards Vedanta. So that was his message. Okay. Is sannyasi a prarabdha or a free will? This is again Srini, I think. And should we also take to it? So his point was, he said that, if you read the Aitreya Upanishad, it says sannyasa is a must at a certain point in your life, okay? He says you cannot attain moksha without sannyasa, is what the Aitreya Upanishad said. But he said this is with respect to a context. You need to understand that Adi Shankaracharya spoke about this when somebody was completely negating sannyasa ashrama, okay? So the context in that space, I think Adi Shankaracharya spoke about the importance and the need for sannyasa ashrama, and that is how he said it is given like this in the Aitreya Upanishad. But having said that, he said there is something called, Purva Janma Samskara. Sometimes people take to it much early in life. Sometimes people take it later. Sometimes people, may not take it at all. Okay. But he says it is not compulsory for you to do sannyasa to be able to understand and get liberation. Okay. So he says Grihastha Ashrama and Sannyasa Ashrama are designed for certain reasons, right? It's because you have a Grihastha, okay, you are able to sustain a lot of other, factors as far as the society is concerned. You're able to employ a few people at home. You're able to employ somebody at business. Okay, you're also able to take care of other dharmas. Everybody is dependent on the Grihastha dharma because that is a person who's actually earning for the society.
Subbu, sorry for interrupting you. Would you mind increasing the font size a little bit, please?
Oh, so sorry.
No, it is okay. And no, don't do that. Just increase this, the bottom right. The zoom.
The zoom?
Yeah.
1 minute. Yeah. Is
yeah,
it okay?
That's better. Thank you.
Okay. So what this is the last question. So what he said was, it is not compulsory for you to take sannyasa. Okay. But having said that, he said each ashrama is conducive for a certain, path. Okay. So he asked this question, he gave this example, right? So let us say you have a screwdriver. Now with a screwdriver, you can tighten a screw, but can you cut a cake? The answer is yes, but may not be so conducive. It's better you use a knife, but a screwdriver can also cut a cake. Similarly, if you have a knife and you want to cut a cake, you can cut a cake. But if you want to tighten a screw, can you tighten with a knife? Answer is yes, you can tighten, but it is screwdriver is more conducive. So he said, if you're in the Grihastha Dharma, okay, sannyasa may not be fully conducive, but it is not that you cannot take up to sannyasa, right? Similarly, the other way around. So what he said was, it is not a must that you need to take to sannyasa for liberation, and which is also something that is spoken about in the Gita. So what is actually required is renunciation in terms of our and mental purity in terms of our own, you know, renunciation of desires and mental purity to be able to do it. And it's not about external paraphernalia. It's more about what cleansing that you have inside. Okay, so this was the set of questions with Swami P.
Hey, Subbu,
Swami, yeah,
I just want to add one thing that one very nice kind
yeah,
of funny
please.
thing that Swami P brought up exactly for this question. So I just wanted to add that when he was talking about this Aitareya Upanishad and why sannyasa is required and may not be required, you could see the authority with which Swami P was talking, because he was saying, understand it in the context of what Shankara is talking about there. So that's the Bhashyam that is there, or the translation, the Shankara's Bhashyam, that is commentary that's there for Aitareya. He said Shankara was very strong there. Just like, for Mandukya Upanishad, Gaudapada becomes very strong against some of the Shunyata in Buddhism and Jainism and so forth. So Shankara assumes a different stance, he said, depending on who the person objecting to that is. And that is probably why Shankara was saying that no, it is required. But then, if you read Gita Bhashyam, it's the same Shankara wrote the commentary on Bhagavad Gita. He talks about how Janaka, who was a karma yogi, and later on he got knowledge and jnana, and he was liberated. He got moksha and everything. But he continued as a king because he had to perform his duties as a king. So he just continued for the good of society, etc. So Swami P himself, he was pulling different quotations at that point. I don't remember all of them, Subbu, but he had a smile on his face when he was talking about it, because you could literally see him enjoying why Shankara was doing this. That was beautiful, because he was inside Shankara's mind, almost like, I know why he did this in that part where he said sannyasa is required. You cannot say it is not required. And then in another portion, he kind of takes a more laid back stance on that. But ultimately, the conclusion is the same. You can definitely use a knife to cut a cloth instead of a scissors, whatever. Yeah.
True. Anything you want to add about your book? I don't remember some of those points that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I can add to that. If I may, I had some very specific questions because I was working on writing, and some of my questions revolved around writing. And one of the things that a lot of us do, Swami P and Swami G also clarified several things in that. So if I may share my screen.
Yeah, sure.
I took the notes and put it in Word. So let me just do that. And of course, we can share all of this. Let me zoom in as well. And,
you remember our WhatsApp group name? Yeah, I forgot that. You remember what?
Arunachala beckons again.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's where I took it out of. Oh, I need to share my screen. Hang on just 1 second. entire screen. Okay. Share. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think you mentioned this, Subbu. He brought up Brahma Satyam, Jagan Mithya, Jivo Brahmaiva Naparaha, couple of times at least. So Swami P, very quick summary here. I think Subbu, your and Srini's notes were pretty detailed here. Nididhyasanam versus Shravanam and Mananam, like listening, thinking, and contemplation. So he clarified Mananam is mainly to remove all doubts and questions. And he got into this thing about the stages of how you are developing your intellectual skills to better and to make your understanding better and better. Until all doubts are removed, Mananam will continue to go on. You'll keep on thinking about it and thinking about it, and it's combined with a lot of listening and reading and study and so on. So until every doubt is removed, Mananam is you will be in the Mananam stage. There is no question about that. After which Nididhyasanam can be split into listening Nididhyasanam and understanding or jnana knowledge Nididhyasanam. So the way he was explaining, and of course, when you are sitting in front of Swamiji, you are like, yes, that is so clear. He had such a level of clarity. It was just at that. I mean, you just have to be there to feel that level of clarity when you are hearing the Swamiji's talk. And he was talking about, Shravana Nididhyasanam and Jnana Nididhyasanam. So what he meant by that, and I think Srini had a question on that. I keep listening to a lot of things. I don't understand them. I go back and listen again, and is that Nididhyasanam, or can I do Nididhyasanam, or is that something else? And this was the response to that. And what Swami P also said was, if you are, and this directly applied to me, and I'm sure to many of us, like if you're listening to Gita lectures or Upanishad lectures or any of the lectures of the scriptures while you are walking, for example, that could be a combination of Shravana Nididhyasanam, like you are listening and you are immersed in that lecture for the time that you are listening to it. But you also have some questions that might come up. So it's a you can say it is Shravana Nididhyasanam and Mananam, because you continue to remove your doubts. And similarly, Jnana Nididhyasanam, when you cross over to that stage, then you might be meditating. And I think Subbu, correct me if I'm wrong, and Srini, okay, you also joined. Correct me if I'm wrong, he did talk a little bit about meditation, right? When we were talking with Swami P, he did talk about meditation, and
but he said you refer to my chapter 6 notes, so that is also something he spoke about.
Yes, yes, on the chapter 6 notes, yes. And then moving on to this portion, is this clear, by the way? Is the font clear, big enough?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. So, so I started talking about my book, part 1, and bringing the scientific perspective. And then I told him, Swamiji, I want to continue, into chapters 4, 5, and 6. And I told him I'm kind of listening to Swamiji's lectures, who is and was his disciple. So he nodded and he said, yeah, it will get more and more difficult as you go along, and let everything go well. You continue your work, but you will need to let go of science at some point without any inhibitions. He made it very, very clear. You need to let go of that thing, because that is what makes it harder and harder as you keep progressing, because this is beyond science. Science as we call what science is, right? And he mentioned something which I did not capture here. He said when he said you need to let go of it without any inhibitions, and we have talking kind of mix of English and Tamil, so some of the translation may not come through very clearly. But what he said was, you need to feel very comfortable with it, and don't try to bring and try to explain everything. I think what he meant by that was, don't try to make everything like a logical explanation. Don't feel compelled to logically, put a logic around all these things, because it's not there. It cannot be there. You need to go beyond that. He made it very, very clear. So that was very beautiful to listen to that from Swami P. The third one is, of course, I think Subbu addressed it. This was a major question that I know that we have had a lot of discussion, and Srini brought it up. And I think this was probably the first question, Srini, that we posed to Swami P. And he said, there is no yardstick, obviously. You will know as you progress. And he said self-measurement with emotions and intellectual understanding will happen automatically. That's what he said. So it was very heartening to hear that. Of course, maybe subconsciously we all know that, but we still have that doubt or samshaya. So he cleared that. Then on to Swami G. So one of my key questions was, because I do want to bring the scientific perspective, and I want to target younger audiences. And the first thing he said was, write for yourself. That's why you're doing this, right? And I said, yeah, that's exactly the reason why I'm doing it. Then he said, write for yourself and make sure you are good with your work. And don't worry about it. That audience thing will automatically happen. So you can see that you're doing this for yourself, so be true to that. It's just the clarity with which both Swamijis were, that is what struck me as so, there was no, how would I say, right? They were not wishy-washy about anything. It's just, this is what you got to be doing. So when you are sitting in front of a guru, it really felt like that we were listening to gurus here. Doing interviews and writing about them. So one of the interviews I did was one person that I'm sure we'll talk about this later on, but one of the interviews, and several of you are all going to be involved or have already been involved in some of these interviews, and they're all going to be put into words and everything. What Swamiji said was, if you're talking about experiences of people, don't get too deep into them, because it will confuse your readers, and it may even confuse you. Like if they are talking about some mystical experiences they had, then your whoever is reading, including yourself, if you go back and read it, you'll get confused, because it goes into this mysticism and all that. Focus on the teachings. The teachings is teaching of Vedanta, and focus on that. So don't get too deep into the describing that experience and trying to make a lot of sense for your readers, and you don't have to be deliberate about it. Writing on chapters 4, 5, and 6, this was one of the key things that he gave advice on, is some of the concepts here may not be, it requires more thinking and listening than reading and saying, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So he said action in inaction. He just gave an example, and he quoted few other Upanishads, and it was amazing to, I mean, both Swamijis, right? They just, when you're talking, the quotations and the verses just come. He pulled from different areas, and he said, just write a small paragraph and move on. Let people take it for what it is. And if they want to dig deeper, they can go and listen to a guru, or go to a guru and learn from the guru. So you don't have to write 3 pages explaining action and inaction, and then it becomes tedious for them, and they just become tired of it. And that will actually work the opposite of what you really want to do. So that's kind of my summary here. Thank you. I think
Beautiful.
Srini
Srini, you
also
want to
joined
add
us.
anything else before we can open it up for any Q&A from the rest of us?
Hello. Sorry, I'm just back from a big, Kumbhabhishekam.
Okay. So we are assuming
I will
that,
take it later.
yeah, that's fine. So thank you,
I've-
Subbu, Gunj, and Srini. Any questions from anyone to
See, on
these
Guru
three?
Parandaranda interaction, I've just posted some pointers and I've also shared the document so you can go through it. I mean, it's fairly clear.
And just to conclude this off, also from my side, if I may, what Subbu said was exactly, I just want to echo that more. Both Swamijis, right? It seemed like they immediately observe when you start talking with them, they observe you and they listen to you and they figure out the context with which they need to be talking to you. It's felt like that. This time even more so than last time. And Swami P, when he was talking about Adi Shankara, and when he was talking about, you know, how you are acting in the outside world and how you are thinking inside, and the Vedant, how you are bringing Vedantic thinking to yourself, he went down to a whisper and he said, I cannot go and mention this to people who are, not Vedanta students. I can say this here to you guys, but I can't say this generally outside, and you shouldn't be doing that either. He mentioned that. It was just a very surreal moment when he mentioned that. I've never. Obviously, I've met Swami P just for the second time. The last time, I can tell you, he did not talk like this. Swami G as well. Srini asked a very daring question. I think it was you, Subbu. He asked a very daring question.
Daily
So,
schedule.
Swami, you are here in the. Sorry, you did. You're here in the middle of nowhere. What do you do every day? Like, what's your routine? Like, morning to evening? Like, I don't know what you're doing. So he kind of smiled and he said yes. And then Subbu also said, I hope it's okay to ask you a question.
Before
Yes.
you answer that, maybe for the benefit of the rest of the people here, you might want to just take a minute to explain where he lives.
Oh,
The
yeah. I was
surroundings.
coming to that. So so Swami G lives outside of Chennai, about 1.5 hours, 80 kilometers southwest on the way to Tiruvannamalai. So you're heading southwest from Chennai inland for about 80 kilometers. So it's about 1.5 hours to his, let's call it a hermitage almost. It's in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the forest. But what his disciples and he have done is they've kind of cleared the land a little bit there and planted some mango trees and coconut trees. And then in the middle, there's a small cottage like home. So he lives there. It's got, I think, a couple of rooms. One is, of course, his sleeping quarters, bedroom. The front area, he has all the, and I think I shared that photo with all the gurus, starting from Dakshinamurti and Swamijis and Swami Dayananda Saraswati, and his own guru, Swami Paramatananda. And so that's, I'm thinking that's his prayer room. And then his room where he receives guests like us, disciples and students and so forth, for discussions. So he pretty much lives in the middle of nowhere. And some of his disciples living close by, they give him food because they don't cook on their own. But he did respond to Subbu's question. He said it's
Yeah,
okay.
actually,
I can answer that.
my reason for asking was, after you have learned and, how do you put this in practice, even after having realized a certain, set of truths, right? So my reason for asking him was, what would a person, a jnani, would actually, indulge in after having fully been realized, right? So I think he said 2, 3 things. He said, I have a regular daily routine. That is what he said. But at the same time, he made one more mention. He said, I have also given up a lot of things. And for me, even giving up the lectures, right, is itself a big, ask, big ask from my side right now. That is my tapas. Because he said, sometimes this can be a little binding. That is, you always want an audience. You want some people to come and, speak to you, ask you, you clarify, you get a high, right? So he was trying to tell me that, today whatever I have said, and what is now is for people to follow, but I do take questions in case some people ask. I refer to the mail and sort of respond to them. But for me, giving up lectures itself was a big tapas in a way. So that was his response.
Fantastic. So we got two questions, two hands raised. VP.
VP, you're muted, huh?
Yeah, I'm unmuting myself. Hey, thanks, guys. It was really, really nice listening to your Q&A that you had with both the Gurujis. So one question, Gunz, for you. If you remember when we went to see
Yes.
Swami Ji, we had a very, very, what should I say, very quiet moment, and we didn't know where to start for at least, I think, 2 minutes or
Yes.
something like that. So,
Yes.
so how was it this time?
It was very different, VP. And I think the three of us are here. K2 is not here. The four of us met with Swami Ji and with Swami P 2 years ago, right? So at that time when we went, and that's what VP is referring to is when we went, and we went to this middle of nowhere cottage, and Swami Ji called us in, and we reached there early, and he said, just come over. We went, sat there, and then there was just silence for a few minutes. Nobody knew what to say. It was just very quiet, and he just kept looking at us. He was just waiting. He wasn't going to say anything. This time it was very different. Immediately we launched into the questions, because when we were driving, so we had met with Swami P in the morning, right? And our mind was full of all these things, the way he responded and everything. So we were all feeling so, how would I say, hyper, and we were very excited. And then Subbu made us drink 2 glasses of sugarcane juice right outside when we finished the meeting. So we were also at that sugar. So, so as soon as we reached Swami Ji's place, we were standing around and we were preparing with all these fruits and everything. So VP, if you remember, we forgot about that, and then we scrambled to go and grab some fruits and stuff outside.
That's right.
So this time Subbu and Srini were highly prepared, and they had fruits, and so we were arranging. So suddenly, and we were there 45 minutes early. So Swami Ji stepped outside. He must have seen us, and he just said, come inside. But by that time, I can tell you, we had already revised a lot of the questions that we talked to Swami P, and then all these remaining questions were there. So as soon as we went in, within a minute, we just launched into it. It was different, VP. I think we all also felt sort of comfortable asking these questions this time than last time. That was one big difference to me. Yeah, because I think I am the common denominator here between the two meetings.
Correct. Yeah. No, that's wonderful. And my other question to any of you was that what was the big googly, if you will, meaning like you went in thinking A, and the response was completely B. Anything that in particular stood out from what we have been talking about or what we have been studying, etc.
Not really, VP. I think there was a lot of validations, and like for example, we were talking about whether the sadhana chatushtayam, right, and sadhana panchakam, that which has got those 40 things that one needs to do, etc. So those were the things that it was a little comforting when he also gave his point of view. When he said that all this is to bring you to Vedanta, and if you're in Vedanta now, stick to it as much as you can, but don't let it be something that is going to bother you. Yeah, I think that was one aha moment for me, at least. Yeah.
I'll tell you, you can call it googly or Yorker or whatever you like, but one thing was sure, when that's why I wanted to share with you all both the Swamiji's advice on the writing aspect, and And Swami P actually said, writing is also another form of Nididhyasanam. You can think of it that way. That was one thing. And he said it is absolutely fine to write, to listen, where you're walking and listening. All of them you can say Shravana Nididhyasanam, or the classification that he did.
Yeah.
That was very good to hear, encouraging to hear, I should say.
Yeah, in fact, he said all these presentations we make is also Nididhyasana. So that's how he said. Once you have the understanding, and you're spending a lot of time making these discussing this, etc., all this is Nididhyasana.
Yeah. He satsang, he included that. Swami Ji, my googly here, I think it was a googly for me, is I think I was in my mind thinking that he is going to say, when I asked him about writing chapter 4, 5, and 6, that he was going to say, yeah, continue continue your work or whatever. But he was very clear. He said, don't just harp on it and write page after page after page. Keep it simple. Write one paragraph, move on. So he was giving very prescriptive advice this time. I felt that what to do and what not to do. That was, I don't think it was a googly VP, but it was very prescriptive advice.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. Thank you, guys, and thanks for sharing your experiences. Wonderful.
Rick?
Yeah, sorry, VP Srini here. Sorry, just give me 2 minutes. I'm audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
Yes.
Hello. Yeah.
Yeah, you're audible.
One of my biggest takeaway was free will versus prarabdha. So here what he said was there is no clear distinction between prarabdha stops and free will starts. So free will and prarabdha is always a mixture. You will never know, is it because of a free will or a prarabdha. But he says, as we progress and we become more mature, you will finally understand that the entire thing is controlled by prarabdha only. So he said, for the initial students, I think Swami Ji spent some time on this. For the initial students who are at the beginning of Vedanta, we very clearly say that free will is required. But once the student matures in his Vedantic journey, he will understand that ultimately it is the prarabdha which is triggering the free will also. So it will be a mixture of free will and prarabdha. So that is where he made a very clear distinction. And ultimately you will realize that it is the prarabdha which is taking you forward. So this was one insight which Swamiji brought. But again, that depends upon constant practice, and ultimately you will get to understand this. I think this is one takeaway, and one nagging question which was there for me for a very long time. I think it got clarified. So you start with free will, and ultimately you realize that your entire life is actually governed by prarabdha only, and free will and prarabdha is a mixture of both. So I thought I'll just tell this and then conclude.
That's beautiful, Srini. And I want to mention one thing. When Swami Ji was talking, when he was responding to this question from Srini, it's a beautiful thing that you brought up, Srini. He was talking like this: free will, prarabdha. So he was analyzing and he was telling us, and you could see him like walk through the logic, and this was his gesture. It's like this and like that. Because you could see that the mind was just turning and giving you that teaching. It was beautiful.
Fantastic. Rick?
Well, first of all, thank you. Also nice to see the glow reignited just in discussing being there. Also, I think the comment about their confidence in what they say is really just their clarity being reflected in whatever topic they're discussing. The other thing I would say that I could hear in the questions and in the responses, to me at least, was we're always trying to add complexity, or we're always trying to give me the answer. Tell me what the answer is. And they're completely resistant to this approach. One, they make it simplistic because it is ultimately simple. Sometimes it's not so much that it's so hard to get to, but we overstep it. We constantly go beyond what is really true. But for example, when he was talking about the comment on Shankara and sannyas, I think it's really important to understand that, in the relative, and this is, I get into this sometimes with Gunz, you're looking for absolute answers in a relative world and they don't exist and you should stop asking. But you know what I mean. We all do that. But again, the relativism is real in the sense that in any given situation, the same person with the same clarity may choose differently. That doesn't invalidate the responses. It's life.
Thank you, Rick. All right. Any other questions for these three travelers? Okay. So thank you, first of all, three of you. Appreciate it so much. And it was really good. And what I really also liked about was that you actually put together a document which which can be used as a ready reckoner. It's like a FAQ that we can use later on as well. So thank you so much for that. And, needless to say, you're going to share that with in the WhatsApp group. Okay. So with that, now I think we can go to the next part of our satsang today, which is chapter 12 revisions. Who wants to go first today?
I've not prepared, Gultax.
I have prepared, but if anybody wants to go, they can go. I mean,
okay, let me go first then. Then maybe after that we can take Subbu, and I request one of you to be a timekeeper because I really want to close this in 15 minutes, and I have this bad habit of going way long, and I want to stop that. Okay.
don't restrict. It's okay.
Let me just share my screen for a second. Okay. So I'm just going to start off with the. Sorry, can you see my screen? Are you able to see my screen or no?
Yeah,
Yeah, we're able to see.
Yeah.
You want to scroll a little bit up?
No, I want to start from the bottom. So anyway, that's fine.
Oh.
Okay. I'm going to start off with a small prayer. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langhayate girim yat krupatamaham vande paramananda madhavam. So, as I looked at chapter 12, I tried to put together who is a true bhakta. And from shlokas 13 onwards in till 20, there's a enumeration of different qualities of bhakta. And what struck me was that the bhakta is not someone who goes to a temple or who does any of the quote unquote standard things that we normally have misunderstood this word to be used for. So a bhakta is that one who has all these qualities, and I've listed some of them here. Adveshta, Maitra, Karuna, Nirmama, Nirahankara, Samadukka, Sukha, Kshami, Santushtaha, Yogi, Yatatma, Drudhanishyaha, Mayarpita Manobuddhi, Anapekshaha, Shuchihi, Dakshaha, Udasinaha, Gatavyataha, Sarvarambha, Parityagi. So the whole idea was, okay, if we are, the reason why I'm saying this is that this is like the North Pole of, if someone wants to follow Bhakti Yoga as their path, this seems to be like the North Pole of how do you measure yourself, whether your Bhakti is true or not. Are we developing these qualities? That's the key point that, in my view, is a takeaway for me from when you read shlokas 13 to 20, when the chapter concludes. So now let me get back to how I looked at this particular chapter 12, right? So the chapter 12, if you take the analogy of how a seed grows into a big banyan tree, the seed was there in chapter 11, the last shloka, which is mat karma krun mat paramaha mat bhakta sangavarjitaha nirvaira sarvabhuteshu, and I forgot the last pada. So you get the idea. So the whole idea was that there are a few things. There are 5 or 6 things that Bhagavan says when he concludes chapter 11, and then Arjuna's mind is churning through with all these chapters. Okay, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. And then he's trying to understand, that's the fertile mind in which this particular seed has been sown in. And then he asks this question, which is pouring water onto the seed, which is Evam Satata Yuktaye. That is the first shloka that it starts with. And then what exactly is happening in Arjuna's mind when he asked that question? Okay, I want you to take your attention here, right? So there are, let me go from the bottom here. So Vishwarupa Darshana Yoga is chapter 11. Vibhuti Yoga is chapter 10. And then it is 9, 8, and 7. Okay. So if you look at chapter 11 and chapter 10, chapter 11 and chapter 10 is Bhagavan is actually explaining in multiple ways how you can understand a Nirguna Nirakara principle into Saguna Sakara principle. And he is giving thousands and thousands of examples. And if you can just remember, Vibhuti Yoga is all about his Vibhutis. And then Vishwarupa Yoga is a clear visualization of all his Vibhutis in one encapsulated form. Okay. And then the 2 key messages that he says in these where he's explaining about his Vibhuti and Vishwarupa Darshana. First of all, he says that, if the shloka that struck me was Dadami Buddhi Yogamta. I will give Buddhi Yoga to those who understood my Vibhuti. That means if I am a Sakara Bhakta, as I progress on that Sakara Bhakta, I will get the Buddhi Yoga about what is the Gnana that is required for Kaivalya, for Moksha. So he says very clearly that, Buddhi Yoga or Gnana Yoga is the final path, final step that one needs to take, necessarily must take. And Vibhuti Yoga, if you are able to understand that, if you're able to visualize his entire universe as his glory, then it's easy for us to get to the Gnana, and then you can make that switch happen. Now, the next part is Vishwarupa Darshana Yoga. Once Vishwarupa Darshana Yoga, the difference between Vibhuti Yoga and Vishwarupa Darshana Yoga that's going on in Arjuna's mind at that point of time is, the key shloka is Nimitta Matram Bhava Savesachi. So he said that, understand that the past, present, and the future is me. Okay? Everything is me. You are just doing nothing. You just be Nimitta Matra and take the glory. Bhagavan is giving us that glory. And to Srini's last point about free will and prarabdha, I think we find ourselves in different situations in our life. At that point of time, we take this self of agency and we have an agenda to do it. I think we just have to let go of that, and we have to say, I am just a Nimitta Matra. I'm just here in the right position at the right time in my life where I am, and I am going to do what I have to do with the clear knowledge that, I have been put in this position, and that helps you to get to Gnana Yoga. And now, the theoretical background for this Vibhuti Yoga and Vishwarupa Darshana Yoga that's going on in Arjuna's mind is the previous 3 chapters, where he's saying in Gnana, now I'm going to start from the top, Gnana Vijnana Yoga. Gnana Vijnana Yoga, he's saying that I'm going to give you the Gnana and Vijnana, and the key shloka there is Sutre Manigana Iva. He's saying that, the entire universe that you see, what is manifested and the unmanifested universe that you see, is all strung like a pearl through a thread, and the thread is me, and you cannot see that thread. Why? That's because Mama Maya Duratyeya. Okay, he says that my Maya is impossible for you to penetrate unless you have that buddhi. And how do you get to that buddhi? And then he goes on to the next chapters. And then he goes to Akshara Brahma Yoga, where he says that Vasudeva Sarvam Iti. He says Vasudeva is Sarvam Iti. I am Vasudeva. Vasudeva is the God who is existing in everything. That's the literal meaning of the word Vasudeva. It also means the son of Vasudeva, which is Vasudeva, but that's a very common meaning. And then that's the most important thing. And then within this whole context, when you look at it, this question obviously is very important for Arjuna to ask, because he's saying at one point of time in the previous all the chapters, you told me that Nirguna Brahman is everything, rest of the things is all Maya, Mithya, whatever. But then you are showing me all these things. What do I do? Whom do I pray? What do I do? And then Bhagavan explains. Okay, now I'm going to point number 4, where he says that Nirakara and Nirguna Brahma Bhakti is tough. That's because each one of us is having an ahankara or a deha bhimana. And ahankara is not ego here. This is more about aham and mamakara, ahankara and mamakara. And if you go back and if you look at it, look at some of these qualities that you would see here, you would see that one of the most important qualities that you would see here, like nirmamaha, nirahankaraha. The more you start developing nirmamaha, nirahankaraha, then it's easier for us to follow the Nirguna Brahma Bhakti. For us to understand, I'm using the wrong words. You cannot follow Nirguna Nirakara Brahma Bhakti, but I hope you get the understanding what I'm trying to say. But then if you're not able to do that, then he says that all you got to do is karma tyaga. And karma tyaga is not letting go of activities and sitting in one place and doing nothing. Because in the earlier chapters, Bhagavan said, even to maintain this sharira, you have to do some karma the other. So karma tyaga is basically letting go of that kama, artha, janita, which is the one that is born out of your agenda, your self agenda. Okay, born out of your desires, born out of your desire for praise or achieving something or whatever, which is selfish agenda. He says that let go of that selfish agenda, and then you start having this ananya bhakti where of Saguna Yeshwara, which is, and then he explains why he needs to have the ananya bhakti, because he says everything is me. Ultimately, you got to see me in everything else, of chapter 10 and 11. And once you do that, what happens is that your man and buddhi, which is the emotional mind and intellect mind, starts settling down on him. And if you go back down here, look at the qualities. Okay, look at the qualities here. So he says yogi. Who is a yogi? Okay, yogi is not someone who does physical asanas. There is this Ashtanga yoga part that you would have. And then you would have my arpita mano buddhihi. You'll start developing that my arpita mano buddhihi. Manas buddhi arpita, given to me. That's the buddhi that you will develop. Bhagavan is saying that here. And even if you're not able to do that, he says just try it. Keep on trying it, and over a period of time you'll get it. And this is nothing any different than nididhyasana at a very practical sense that you would do it. And even if you can't do that, then he says mat karma parayana. Then he says then you do karma yoga. And karma yoga, again, the definition of karma yoga is 2.47. Karmanyeva adhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phala hetur bhuku ma te sangosta akarmani. Don't get attached to inaction, but make sure that you have the responsibility to do the action in the place that you are in today. That's the responsibility that I've given you. Nimitta matram bhava. Go ahead and do it. Forget about the results. Just go ahead and do it. And once you start developing, once you do that, you will develop these multiple qualities, which is this, the shloka 13 to 20, which is adveshta, maitra, karuna, nirmama, nirahankara, samadukka shukaha kshami, santushta yogi, yatatma, drudha nishchayaha, mayarpita mano buddhihi, anapekshaha, shuchihi, dakshaha, udasinaha, gatavyataha, sarvaramba parityagi. Okay. And sarvaramba parityagi in my understanding is exactly this step number 5, where you are letting go of all those desires born out of kama and artha, your selfish desires. You're letting go of it. Okay. One other thing that I want to talk about, I hope I still have the time. Subbu, are you the timekeeper?
You have the time, yeah. Okay.
One other thing that I want to talk about, which I wish I could have shared this on the screen, but I did not have it because I was working on it yesterday. So there are, if you go back to look at Sthita Prajna Lakshana, okay, there are a lot of Sthita Prajna Lakshanas which come in, and I'm going to say a few of them. You might remember these words. Prajahati manogatan sarvan kaman atmani eva atmana tushtaha anudvigna manaha vigata spruhaha vitaraga bayak krodaha munihi sarvatra anabhisnehaha navi nandati nadveshti indriyani indriyarthebhyah samharate yuktaha matparaha ragadvesha viyuktaihi prasanna chetasaha shantaha samyami na kamakami sarvan kaman vihaya nirmamaha nirahankaraha nispruha. even as I say these words, okay, even if you don't remember, chapter 2, what we did way long back, you could see some of the words which are very similar to bhakta qualities. Okay, that's one observation that I've had. And the other thing is, if you look at the commonalities of some of the words, I'm just using the word analysis now. Okay, linguistic analysis, as you might call it. Okay, the common words between bhakta and sthita prajna, I'm going to pick up a few words and to share here. Nirmamaha, nirahankaraha, yogi, samyami, yatatma, santushtaha, prasanna chetasaha, mayarpita manobuddhihi, matparaha, sangavarjitaha, ragadvesha viyuktaihi, sarvaramba parityagi, sarvan kaman vihaya, anapekshaha na kamakami. These are the words which are sort of, they may not be expressed in exactly the same words, except for a few things in these two, sthita prajna and bhakta, but the meanings are the same. Okay, and I will share that as to what meanings are the same and all that. So what my conclusion is that, bhakta, sthita prajna, a true bhakta, 100% bhakta and 100% sthita prajna are no different. And a practicing bhakta and a practicing sthita prajna or a practicing karma yogi is developing bits and pieces of these qualities. And why is this all required? Is for us to be 100% convinced that aham brahmasmi. And that's what it is. And with that, I'm going to just stop here and take any questions.
Hey, Guntax, what's the literal meaning of sthita prajna?
Sthita prajna. Prajna is knowledge. Okay. Sthita is someone who is stable in that knowledge.
So basically, you're saying somebody who has attained that knowledge is the same as the one who is a true bhakta.
Well, that I would put it slightly differently. So one who's attained that knowledge is incorrect, because all of us have that knowledge, but are we 100% stable in that knowledge all the time? Answer is no.
Correct. Yeah, jnani. That's what this thing of sthita prajna. Yeah. So basically, Bhakti Yoga also says that the last stage is arriving at the Jnana Yoga part. So yeah, it is not contradictory is what I was trying to understand from your this thing. Thank you.
Yeah.
Very nice, Guntax.
Thank you. If there are no more questions, we can ask whoever else is ready to go next.
I can go, yeah?
Yeah, go Subha.
Just 1 second. See, I have a few slides, but given that we have just 15 minutes left, I will try to skip a few things. Not all of the slide will be presented and spoken, but I will share it definitely. Yeah. So Hari Om and chapter 12, Bhakti Yoga, right? So I thought, before sharing and getting into Bhakti Yoga, I just thought I will take some notes from what I have read of the Narada Bhakti Stottra very recently. Okay. The first thing is, I think when people talk about bhakti, I think, many of them say that, bhakti is the path you should start with, etc. Why? Because it is very easy. It gives fulfillment and it helps you achieve the highest goal. And every other path is ineffective without bhakti. So, and it doesn't require any qualifications like SCM, like jnana, etc. And what Bhagwan says also is in 8.14, it is Tasyaham Sulabha Partha. That is, it is a very easy thing to attain by everybody. So that is why bhakti is recommended. The second thing is, the real challenge to bhakti is what can bhakti do and what can bhakti not achieve. So the question literally is bhakti kimna karoti. What is it that bhakti cannot achieve? Actually, it can do everything. Why? Because we have a lot of assurances from the Gita itself. So in the Gita, the Dhyana Shloka starts with Mukam Karoti Vachalam, Pangum Langaya Thekiram. So basically it says with devotion and grace, even the dumb can speak eloquently and the lame can also cross mountains. And if you see 10.11, which is the Vibhuta Yoga, he says that Jnana Deepena Bhasvata, saying that out of compassion, I will remove the darkness or ignorance of that person and light the lamp of knowledge. So Krishna himself takes the responsibility, if you're a bhakta, to introduce you into Jnana. So there is nothing that one needs to worry. And the qualifications are required for a bhakta is just about remembering the Lord at all times. Okay. So what is therefore bhakti? Narada Bhakti Sutra in the Sutra number 2 and Sutra number 3 defines and explains bhakti. It says Satu Asmin Parama Prema Rupa and Amrita Swarupa Cha. So there are 3 points being made about what is bhakti. So the first one is bhakti is directed towards the God. Okay. Satu Asmin Parama Prema Rupa. That is, it is of the intensity is very, very high. It is a supreme love. It is Parama Prema. And the third thing they say is Amrita Swarupacha, which means the time duration of this bhakti or the, the love that you have for God and the, is immortal. If you develop bhakti, the time duration is immortal. And even in Bhagavad Gita, we have seen that, Lord Krishna uses the word suhrit. That is, he's your best companion. Bhuktaram Yagya Tapasam also, in chapter 5, I think, he says, I am the, your friend and eternal friend. Not just for this particular, Janma, but for eternity, I've been your constant companion and a trusted friend. So bhakti actually has 3 components here. Direction is towards God, intensity is of supreme love, and time duration is immortal. Okay. There is a difference between, when we say love for God and love for the world. So I think we can quickly go through this. Selfless love, unconditional love versus conditioned love. It is directed towards the God, and here it is directed towards the world. This is immortal, that is limited, perishable. This is superior love. You will never fall, you will only rise. Whereas worldly love, there is a chance that you may fall when the object is not, is probably taken away. Now, coming to basically Bhagavad Gita, I think we are talking about Upasana Yoga. So I think we need to understand what is the difference between Upasana and Upasana Yoga. Now, this is the same thing as what we have seen in Karma and Karma Yoga. So karma is action, karma yoga is selfless action. Similarly, upasana is all practices, rituals, worship aimed at pleasing the Lord for some material gain. So basically it is sakama bhakti directed towards the world, and therefore artha and artharthi bhaktas come under this. Upasana yoga is selfless, upasana done more for the love and devotion of the Lord, and it is not for any selfish gain. It is nishkama bhakti. And therefore, Jigyaso and Jnani Bhaktas come into this. So basically, Upasana Yoga can be termed as Nishkama Upasana. And all Mumukshu should actually take this in a, selfless way and practice it till it becomes a Vasana. So the Upasana has to become a Vasana. Vasana means something which is deep within the subconscious mind, which is basically only through the practice of Tasmat Sarveshu Kaleshu Mamanusmara Yudhyacha. So this is again what the Lord speaks about. Now, what is the benefit of Nishkama Bhakti? There are 8 benefits that come out of Nishkama Bhakti. One is Daya, Kshama, Anusaya, Socham, Saucham. So basically compassion, patience. And, if you compare this to, the qualities of a Bhakta between verse number 13 to verse number 20, you will find that most of these are coming, primarily because, you're a Nishkama Upasana, okay, which is a pre-qualification to Jnana Yogyata. And therefore, you will find that there is a lot of similarity here, right? These above 8 qualities, once acquired, gives a certain set of peace of mind, free from mental disturbances, which has become the essential ingredient for you to acquire Jnana Yoga. So it becomes Jnana Yogyata. So Mumukshu should necessarily follow the Nishkama Upasana so that they are qualified to enter the Jnana Yoga. Okay. And only Nishkama Upasaka can make progress into Jnana and Moksha. So this is the prelude. Now coming to basically the verses. I think the first question raised by Arjuna is that, 12.1 is that which is superior? I think many of, the scriptures have spoken that this question itself is wrong because, one is a stepping stone to the other. Therefore, one cannot compare the means and the end and say it is like saying, is primary school better or, a board, 10th class better? Primary school was required at a certain stage, 10th board exam is required at a certain stage. So you cannot say that one is superior to the other. So the question itself comes out to be wrong. But however, the Lord answers by giving 3 points. So the Bhagavan's immediate response has been that the mind has to be established on him, and this has not to be wavering. It has to be steadfast, ever thinking of him, and it should be with Shraddha, and the person who worship me, him I consider the best yogi. Okay, there is no reference to Saguna, Nirguna, Sannyasa, Grihastha in this statement answer which Bhagavan gives in verse number 2. So the only thing he emphasizes is faith and steadfast devotion, and he doesn't talk about whether it is Saguna, Nirguna, or Grihastha, etc. So it is not focused on the path or the method of worship, but it is only focused on the fact that it has to have faith, Shraddha, and it has to be steadfast devotion to the Lord. So these were the two responses. Now again, if you look at verse number 12:3 to 12:12, okay, right? There are a set of verses, and each of them speaks about a certain path to be able to achieve the goal. Okay, so the highest path is spoken in 12:3, 4, and 5, where he speaks about Nirguna Nirakara Upasana, okay, which is basically talking about the meditation on the imperishable Brahman. Okay, and here he says the qualities required are self-restraint, okay, that is mastery over the senses, equanimity, that is equal-mindedness at all times, and it has to be universal love without any distinction. Sarva bhuta hite rataha. So one has to have extreme form of, a supreme form of love for all beings. Okay, these are the three things for Nirguna Nirakara Upasana, who is to meditate on the Brahman principle. Okay, now what is coming in the way is what the challenges are. 12.5, he says the kleshas. Okay, now we spoke about it in our classes also, that there are 5 kleshas which is coming in the way of us going into the Nirguna Nirakara Brahman path. And what is this? Avidya, egoism, raga, dvesha, and fear of death. Okay, now I will come to this in a little later in terms of the presentation, but these are the 5 kleshas or the challenges that come in the way of us realizing the Parabrahman. Now come to 12.6 to 12.8, he talks about Vishwarupa. So we are now not talking about meditation on the Parabrahman. Now we have come a little lower, and we are talking about Vishwarupa Saguna Nirakara Upasana, which means that you're saying that, I'm still worshipping the Saguna form, but I see the Saguna form everywhere, which is the Vishwarupa form. Okay, the path is basically, I'm seeing the God in everything. The reward is, very clearly that, God is giving you the assurance that even if you do this, he will take you out of the ocean of death and samsara. Okay, just like the way he did it for Gajendra, Ambarisha, and Draupadi, the Nachirat, he says. Nachirat is immediately, quickly. If you were to follow this Vishwarupa Saguna Nirakara Upasana, you will be able to get the benefit of deliverance from ocean of death and samsara. Okay, now what is important here is, I think all along we've been speaking about the fact that the mind has to be anchored in the Brahman, on the Saguna Brahman or the Nirguna Brahman, etc. But here he says the role of intellect is equally important. Okay, so fix your mind on me alone and place the intellect, because intellect is the deciding factor. Now, if the intellect is going astray, then there is very high chance that the mind will also go astray. So it is important. So how do we actually put the intellect in place? Through Smaranam, Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasana, by reading of scriptures, etc. The next level is Ekarupa. So we have come from Virata Rupa. Now Nirguna se Virata Rupa se Ekarupa Upasana, which is a Saguna Sakara Upasana, that is Ishta Devata. So you're now talking about some favorite deity on which you are actually trying to keep your mind. And he says now this can be done through constant practice and dispassion. This is the same thing he says in 635. Abhyasetu na kaunteya vairagyena cha grihyate, which is meaning that, yes, it is very difficult to tame the mind, but through abhyasa and through vairagya, you can get it. Which means what? That whenever the mind goes astray, bring it back to the path. Okay, and use dispassion as a methodology to be able to exercise this and try and bring it back. And Abhyasa yoga is something that is being quoted for all the yogas: Karma yoga, Bhakti yoga, Jnana yoga. So there is no other way. You have to have practice and try and put this in place. The next level is when it comes to 12.10, he talks about Karma yoga, where he speaks about Nishkama Karma Bhakti, which is service. But he says, no, okay, you cannot even do this. You cannot sit and do Dhyana, Upasana, all that is fine. Whatever you do, you dedicate it to me. Okay. Okay. So mat karma paramo bhava. So this is what I think Rajesh also spoke. So whatever you do, you dedicate it to me. And I think the same thing he speaks again, the same language He speaks in chapter 9 also, right? That you first, first he speaks Advaita, then he speaks Bhakti, and then he says, Karma, then he says, offer at least a flower, and then he says, Yat Karoshi, Yat Juhochi, whatever you do, you offer it to me. Okay. Even then, if you are having a problem, right? He says, you can still, be my bhakta if you are able to renounce the fruit of my actions, which is karma palatyagam, which is sakama karma bhakti, right? Now, there is nothing below this, because below this, there is no yoga, there is only bhoga, okay? And so what this does is basically, it categorizes bhakti in 5 levels. However, there is a twist, kahani mein twist jaise bolte hain, that, verse number 12, which I call the compromise shloka, I think, where he suddenly twists and says, while all these are level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, my dear, karma palatyagam is, exalted and spoken about in the verse number 12, primarily to draw a lot of people into spirituality. I think that is the kind of explanation most of them give. And the second thing is, when you do karma palatyagam, you're actually sacrificing your ego. And when you're sacrificing your ego and giving up the binding sense of doership, you're able to attain peace. So what he says in 12.12 is, while abhyasa, jnana, abhyasa is, jnana is greater than abhyasa, dhyana is greater than jnana, karma palatyagam is greater than dhyana. He says, the moment you do karma palatyagam, you will have peace. And what is peace? Peace is something that is definitely required for you to progress in your spiritual journey. So in spiritual journey, we're talking about the 3 P's. We need peace, we need perfection, we need purity. Okay. So this is the 12.12 verse. So just putting them in a, format, a laddering of bhakti. So 12.3 to 5 talks about nirguna nirakara bhakti, which is the jnana bhakta. 12.6 to 12.8 talks about the saguna nirakara bhakti, which is the virata bhakta. Then 12.9 talks about saguna sakara bhakti, which is the ekarupa ishta devata bhakta. 12.10 talks about nishkama karma bhakti, and then sakama karma bhakti, which is the karma palatyagam, right? Now, when we say we are in samsara, and what is the root cause of samsara? We say avidya, which is one of the kleshas we spoke about, right? The first klesha is avidya. Now, avidya is what problem? Avidya is an intellectual problem. Now, because you have an intellectual problem, what happens? You take wrong conclusions, which is adhyasa, okay? And what is the erroneous conclusion we make? We say, I am aham apurnaha. I am not complete. When I say I am not complete, the whole life, what am I doing? I am going in search of something to make me complete. So it generates a lot of desires to become complete, okay? It leads to kama. Now, kama, when fulfilled, leads to lobha, greed. And if it is not fulfilled, desire, it leads to basically krodha, okay? Fulfilled desires can multiply again and form multiple desires. So there is a never-ending cycle, and it is because of avidya, and avidya raises to basically, the erroneous conclusion of aham apurnaha, which is the root cause for all the desires in our, day-to-day experiences, right? So what is the solution to the intellectual problem? The intellectual problem, if you see, has become now an emotional problem. Because you had avidya, which is ignorance, it has translated it into an emotional problem, which is kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsarya, right? So the idea is to basically give jnanam to the intellectual problem and sufficiently, convince the intellect to be able to, understand the reality, and thereby, by making jnana a part of our daily life, a slow transformation will also happen at the emotional level. So this again goes back to the discussions we had with Swami P, where he said you can evaluate at both the emotional level and intellectual level into where am I, okay? So since now I am Purnaha, if I say I am complete, okay, then what happens is whatever I experience in this world, be it a karta, be it a bhokta, be it a witness, I operate from a different sense of understanding. When I'm a karta, I do not operate for fulfillment, but I operate with fulfillment. So I do not have any selfish desire. I have only a selfless desire. And that expresses in love, compassion, and is very productive, as it is a tranquil mind, which is actually experiencing this. As a bhokta, I am not vulnerable to anything that is happening. So anything happens as a result of whatever happens in this world, I am not, as a receiver, I am not impacted. And as a witness, okay, I have samatvam, which is basically free from raga dvesha. So this summarizes basically all the verses till in chapter 12 till the 12th verse. Now, from the 13th verse to the 20th verse, I have actually captured this in a table format. I don't want to go through this in detail. We have a little paucity in terms of time, but there are 35 traits of a bhakta which are actually spoken about here in these 7 verses. Okay. Basically like Adveshta Sarva Bhutanam, no hatred towards all beings, Maitra, friendly, Karuna Yevacha, compassionate, Nirmamo, without the sense of I and mine, Nirahankaraha, without egoism, Samadukaksham, Sukakshami, that is equal-minded in sorrow, happiness, and is forgiving. So similarly, Santushta Satatam, always contented, Satatam Yogi, steady in meditation, Yatatma, self-controlled, Dhrida Nishchayaha, of firm conviction, Maya Pitamano Buddhihi, with mind and intellect dedicated to me. So we saw that the actual problem is an intellectual problem of avidya. So we have to not only get the mind, but we also have to have the intellect, dedicated towards and directed towards the God. Mad bhakta sa prameya sa me priyaha. That is, this devotee is dear to me. Okay. Similarly, if you look at verses number 15, 16, here he says, the person is not impacted by the world, nor is the world being impacted by him. So he is not somebody who's going to throw a fit of hatred or, of joy and fear and anxiety, and he's dear to me. Okay. He's free from all desires. So, anapeksha suchir darsha. Suchir is actually to be clean. Okay. Now, when he says shushir daksha, it is talking about purity not only on the outside, but also on the inside. Okay. So we have to cleanse our sense organs. If you see the Jnana, Marga, he talks about the fact that sense control and mind control is 2 important aspects. So Sushir Dasha here talks about purity, internally and externally. And of course, Udasinaha, Mad Bhaktaha, okay, whatever. And, basically reading the sense. And finally, he concludes in verse number 20. That is, those who follow this nectar of Dharma, okay, Yetu Dharma, Dharmyam Mritamidam, Yatoktam Paryupasate, practiced as described above, Shraddhana Matparama, with faith having me as their goal, Bhakta Satevi, Bhakta Stevi Me Priyaha. Sorry, I think though basically he concludes saying that it is not only they are dear to me, they are very much dear to me. So this is the summary which I have prepared for chapter 12. I think we are maybe right on time. Thank you very much. Yeah, Hari Om. I'm just stopping the screen share.
Beautiful, Subbu. Thank you so much. Although you and I did not talk, looks like we picked the same Jnana Shloka today. Mukam Karoti
Yeah,
Vacha.
Mukam Karoti. Yeah, I saw that when you were presenting.
I have
correct.
no idea why I picked that, but when I read, when you shared why that is relevant, it was so beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Subbu. I think now rest of all can present based on your PowerPoint. I'm just waiting for this.
Subbu, when you talked about bhakti, first of all, a fantastic presentation. Once again, thank you. When you talked about the bhakti upasana, the first part of this thing, right? You talked about nishkama upasana, right? And sakama upasana. That is not covered in chapter 12, right? That bhakti part was different, this thing, right? Just want to be sure.
No, he speaks about sakam. See, when he says karma pala tyagam, you're actually talking about sakama karma bhakti, no? And when you're saying surrender or dedicate all the actions to me, he says, when you're dedicating everything, you're not having any selfish desire. So it's nishkama karma bhakti. So both of them are karma bhakti level 1, level 2. But one is sakama and one is nishkama.
That is karma yoga. That is
Correct.
that nishkama karma and this thing. But you mentioned about nishkama upasana, which is different, right? Nishkama upasana and sakama upasana.
Yeah. So what I said was, when you say karma and karma yoga, we basically say karma is action and karma yoga is selfless actions. Okay. Right. So similarly, when you're talking about upasana, it is basically all the worships, directed towards the Lord for certain gains. Right? When it is sakama, it is artharthi. When it is nishkama, it is jigyasu jnana bhakti. And nishkama upasana is what is called as upasana yoga.
Right. Thank you. Understood.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Subbu?
Excellent, Subbu.
Hey, thank you.
Fantastic.
I'll share the
very clear and very comprehensive and very clear. Thank you very much.
Okay.
All right. So if there are no questions, we can conclude. And next week we will continue with the chapter 12 revisions. And I have a feeling that we probably will conclude chapter 12 revisions by next week, and then I can follow up and set up something for the following week. But over the course of the week, I will send out a message on what we're planning. Okay. All right. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayah, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.
Hari Om.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Hari Om. Thank you.